just blessed to have you guys here, and we're very grateful that you are here in this very, very special day. Let's bring the band on up. Everybody, Breakthrough, a round of applause. It's so interesting to watch True Chico. And now these guys, I remember these guys and True Chico back in the day when we were doing the river concerts. Remember those way back in the day? So it's awesome to see where they're at now. Makes me feel a lot older. Because they're out of college or almost out of college. They've got families now, and congratulations. Have a round of applause for Breakthrough and for what God has done with this band. PJ told me to maybe write up some questions. She wanted them. I said, nope. Unscripted.
Yeah, I don't know why you kept them all secret. He's like, no, you're not going to know till right beforehand. So I imagine that they're either really embarrassing or hopefully easy to answer.
Easy to answer, slightly embarrassing. So, I'm Ken Quattrin from KNLW 98.9 FM, and thank you. It's been a blessing to have these guys on our air. It's been a blessing to actually have local music on a radio station, so I'm sure maybe you guys have heard some of their tunes, and that promo was really cool. That was very cool.
That was really cool.
So, today's a big day for you guys. This is a huge deal. Not only are they releasing the CD, they're all in one building. Because they're like everywhere. They're in Nearstrand, Winona, Switzerland. I mean, this family is everywhere. To have them in the building at one time, this is unheard of. Let's turn the clock back a little bit. You guys did a rock CD, 2 of them. Now you're here doing a praise and worship CD. Did you ever think you would get to this point in your early career?
I remember when we started, we were all about the rock band and the rock music and like heavy electric guitars and some screaming and things. And there were people right from the beginning who said, because we were a worship team back then, and we still are, they said, you really got to record a worship album. We were like, no, man, it's hardcore rock all the way. And we're just going to make it harder and harder. So back then, I never thought it was going to happen. I had high hopes.
See, I get to see their alter ego. I get to see the headbanging part of them. I don't get a chance to see them do praise and worship because I don't attend this church, but it's truly your heart.
We were headbanging out there beforehand to get it out.
Yes. Awesome. But I know it's truly your heart to do praise and worship, even though you are a rock band. Major influences. Let's go down the line.
You want us to do like check? You want us to do like maybe 3?
Who's check?
I'm like a quarter check. No,
okay.
Okay.
Major influences.
Okay. I'll go with 3. Lincoln Brewster, Alter Bridge. For those who don't know who that is, that was Creed, now with a new singer, and Periphery.
I feel like mine are ones that people already know. I really like Paramore a lot. She's a firecracker on stage, so I really like them. And then Carrie Job I've recently been getting into just because she does these high notes that I don't know how she does that. And Taya Smith from Hillsong. She sings the ocean song. Yeah.
Yeah. Mine's been changing recently, so I've been getting into like more folk music and stuff. So I really like Chris Steele.
Country.
Okay,
kinda.
now. I do play with a country band. That does not necessarily mean that I am like really into them. No, I enjoy playing with the band.
Diversity.
Yeah, diversity. Go for diversity. So to sort of like get the smattering, I guess, Punch Brothers, which is a progressive bluegrass band. They're super fun. Oh, gee, I should have thought about this. Punch Brothers, probably the Deftones. I like the Deftones, some classic like hard rock stuff. And as far as worship teams go, I'm a fan of. Now I forgot her name. Carrie Job. Yep, that's it. Carrie Job. Goodness, the name slips my mind easily. But yeah, so that's my 3.
I am a huge fan of Bethel worship, as well as Planet Shakers, because they have some awesome synth stuff, and I like that, as well as Hillsong and Jesus Culture. That was 4.
My biggest influences for music, drumming, and overall character, Lester Stell Jr., formerly from Pillar, and then Kelly Clarkson. But then Matt
Kelly
Garcica.
Clarkson is your influence,
Yeah.
or who
Really?
plays for Kelly?
Sean,
Kelly
really?
Clarkson is a big
You should hear
influence
Sean
on
singing
me.
in the shower. Sounds just like Kelly.
Yep. Falsetto all the time. And then Matt Greiner from August Burns Red. Those are my biggest influences.
Very diverse and very interesting considering what they enjoy playing. And I'm trying to get him on Striper. Crickets,
You
come
think you're
on.
almost alone.
I remember the first time I saw you guys at the river. And you know when you hear something, you're just drawn to it. And it was you warming up. You had your 12-string, I think? 7 or whatever. I'm technically declined. And you're just drawn to a certain sound. And then I saw you and your brother switching bass and guitar, and she does the keyboards, and you guys can, and you're the ukulele now, and you guys are just so musically talented. You guys can play different spots. When you are writing a song, or whether you're going live, or exchanging microphones to take the answer, how do you decide, hey, you know, Drew's going to do the solo on bass and I'll do the solo on guitar, PJ? Or how do you guys figure that out as you in the writing process?
It's almost dibs.
Because they don't want me to play, that's why.
Although you are endorsed.
It's usually a near fight to the death, I would say. No, it depends on who sort of planted the seed of the song, because we all write together, but people come up with ideas, and so, hey, this is a song I'm bringing to the table and stuff. And so if it's, PJ or myself, it's pretty difficult to just write a full song on bass guitar. Bass guitarists know that, all of you that play bass in the crowd. So
There's one.
yep. So there you go. It's hard to write a full song just on the bass, isn't it? And so, yeah, typically. And
Victor Wooten doesn't think so.
Yeah. I'm not Victor Wooten, unfortunately. So if I've written the beginnings of a song, I might come forward with guitar. PJ's written it, he might come forward with guitar. If Quattrin has written the song, she makes us do chores and things, and whoever she likes the best at the
Whoever
end of the day.
carries me around all day
Yep.
gets to play guitar.
But it's pretty organic. I mean, it's not. I don't think that we sit down and make a decision okay, you play guitar in this, and I'll play guitar in that. I think it just winds up working out the way it works out, which is nice because there's not a whole lot of pressure then. So.
Very cool. Here locally, this is obviously your guys' church, and you guys are also supported out in Switzerland. There's a family connection out there, obviously. And I know you had to coordinate the release over in Switzerland and the time changes and this and that. Knowing that you guys were almost apart for so long and you guys are just moving all over the place, you got so much going on in your lives, how are you able to keep it a fine-tuned, oiled machine to still be able to come together, put a CD together, and still be able to do shows? Because I know, working through PJ, sometimes it's difficult to get the entire family to be up on stage. What was it like trying to get everyone all together to record the CD?
Well, for the oil part, my hair gets oily, and so we use that.
10W30.
Yep.
I tried getting everybody into it. Kind of started, people started paying attention to the fact that I was saying Google Calendar is really helpful. And they're like, oh, yeah, I guess so. A lot of calls, a lot of thinking that somebody else texted the person who's supposed to be there. Like, we get to a show, and where's Drew? Did anybody tell Drew we had a show?
But I get there every time, so.
A little late, but you make it.
I was telling somebody the other day, or I was telling somebody last week that everything in the Medine life just happens. You don't really plan for it. And if you try to plan for it, that's bad. But everything in the Medine life just happens. So it all happens.
Yeah, I would say that for scheduling purposes, it can be a little bit tricky, but that's sort of where we find God in all of it, is because it looks pretty impossible for 5, 6, 7 different people all trying to get their schedule to work together. They work afternoons and I work evenings, and I've got stuff on Sundays after church, and they're free then, but not free on a Saturday or something. And so when it comes down to it, the fact that it all did work, I would say if anybody's looking for proof that God exists, that's the proof right there.
What's it been like to be able to receive the kind of support you're getting from this church and the support you're getting from back in Switzerland? How has that impacted your guys' lives so much?
It's been wholly overwhelming because we just started out as just some homeschooled family who, because our church at the time needed a worship team and enough of us played music, we stepped up. I mean, we had super small beginnings and we never expected this to go anywhere. And so when you have two churches saying, here's some money for your project, I mean, you really don't know how else to feel but overwhelmed. Because, I mean, we were always told not to be rock stars about music. Because, I've met some of my favorite bands, and to be honest, there are a lot of people out there who let the fame get to their head, and then they treat you like dirt. And they don't care who you are. They never ask for your name. They don't remember you next time they see you. And
That's
so,
how you guys treat me, though. I mean,
who just paid you money to do that? No, just kidding. So yeah, I mean, when you know how you should go, and you're expecting God to pick up, everything else, make everything else possible for you. When you're given money like that, or given support, or whatever, you're just completely overwhelmed. And again, another perfect example for anyone who's looking for the reality of God. This album was paid for by people who either had it on their hearts or the two churches who were supporting us. We didn't end up paying anything out of pocket. And we were sitting there last year going, how in the world are we going to afford to put out new music anytime soon?
And a lot of people didn't know that we needed money for an album. They were just like, we feel that this is the right timing. And we were like, oh, we feel that way too.
and it's extremely expensive. With today's modern technology, people probably think it's rather inexpensive to make a CD. As the reality of it is, it can cost tens of thousands of dollars. You got to pay the studio fees and all those kinds of things. So praise God. Let's hear a round of applause for God to make all that work out, man. That's just huge. So, like we mentioned, you did 2 previous rock CDs. That's kind of your wheelhouse. What was placed on your heart to go, you know what, let's cool things down a little bit and let's sing for our hearts for Jesus and do a worship album?
Well, I don't know if it was necessarily like a cool things down approach. I think that we
tone things down.
Well, yeah, but I think that we tried to still stay pretty true to like what it was on our heart to write or compose, just on the musical standpoint. The big shift that really happened, I think, was lyrical content, because it had us looking through our Bibles quite a bit more, which is never a bad thing. But when you're trying to write a hymn or something, you have to have pretty much only scriptural content, and so when you.
It took us 8 hours to write 2 verses.
It took a while. It was a little bit of a slow cooker, but worth it. It was, I think, more of a lyrical change, where before, when we were writing about like ideas and concepts and feelings that we were having personally, this time it was more about, well, it's not really what we're going through at the moment or anything like that. It's what do we need to say about God?
Yeah, and to answer the why, I mean, like Quattrin said, we had about 12 years of people going, you guys should record a worship album. And we finally kind of sat back and considered it, because we had songs that could be considered worship and some that could be considered performance, and we needed to decide what we were going to do. And so I think God just moved on our hearts, and we all kind of shifted towards the worship side of things. And so between us not listening to that prompt for 12 years, and then finally having a couple of songs that go in that direction, we were like, you know what, maybe it is time. And like I said, everything kind of fell together to make it possible. So I think it was time.
And what Drew touched on was the writing part of it, on how you may be digging into the Bible a bit more to get scripture and verses and this and that. I also know you guys have gone out and toured and have done shows. You went out on the Extreme Tour. And just being out in the world in general, how has worldly influences, such as maybe talking with someone that has addiction problems or they're cutting themselves, issues with family, depression, like True Chico talked about, did you guys get a chance to incorporate any of that into the writing of this CD?
I don't know why I draw a lot of people, girls specifically, who are really struggling. So on tour, we went with Extreme Tour for 2 years, and during tour we'd go out for a couple of days, we'd go and get to know people, and then we'd play the music. And I just had a lot of different girls coming up to me who weren't Christian, who were saying, this all is happening, and I don't want God, and I don't love God, nobody loves me. And so the songs that I wrote for this album, which you'll hear tonight, there are 2 that I wrote about the struggles that I was going through, which probably, I don't know if they're as deep as the other girls' struggles. Like, I've never dealt with depression or anxiety like they have. But I tried to incorporate just I feel a lot. I feel all the time. And when somebody else is feeling really down, I can just, it's like I feel it rushing through me, what they're talking to me about. And so seeing those worldly influences and the people who really had no base for thinking that anybody would ever love them, really influenced the sound of mine, the flowingness, and the just saying, God, I'm yours, whatever happens. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And it's just, the power of music is just so powerful, because there's probably individuals out there like me who don't really read much, but you latch on to lyrics and you memorize lyrics, and Pastor Sean, your tongue is a rudder. It's very powerful in how it can steer people. So I know just being out, doing shows, how important it is to be out in there and chatting with people. Has there been any kind of special story, whether it be on the road or whether it be during the recording of the CD, that you could share some kind of inspirational quick story?
From this CD?
From this CD and the worldly experience that influenced it.
I can speak on the worldly experience. Disclaimer, when I tell this story, I cry sometimes, and so, yeah, it's...
Amen.
Thanks. Catherine's going to cup it so it doesn't get on my clothes. So our first go out on Extreme Tour, I don't think any of us knew what to expect. And the tour is more of a missions trip than a tour. They call it a tour so that people will come to the concerts. But it really is more of a missions trip. I mean, there's no glamour or anything like that. I've slept on more concrete floors, like just exposed concrete floors that summer than I think I have in my entire life. But it was great. One of the things, though, I didn't know how to relate to people that had harder experiences than I did. For example, there's a town in Iowa that we stopped in, Stewart, not Stewartville. That's here. So Stewart, Iowa. We made a stop there. It was our first stop that we were actually on the tour, and we had to go out and connect with people. So there was going to be a lot of time when we weren't actually playing. We were literally just wandering around and trying to meet the people that lived in that town and connect with them a little bit. And that was sort of their way of getting people to actually show up to the event so that they could experience, worship music. We always ended every event with worship music, and we had prayer and stuff like that. And so we were out connecting, and I remember praying right beforehand. I was like, God, I have no idea how to talk to people. And so if you could do something about that, that'd be great. Like, I just put it all in God's hands. And the first day, I was out with a group and met this kid. I won't share his name. But I met this kid. I don't know if he'll hear this or if he wants me to use his name. I met this kid. He was about 11 years old. And he was smoking a cigarette, and I didn't know what to do about that, because I personally am opposed to children smoking cigarettes, but I also didn't want to scare the kid off. And so I sat with him and the group, and we just sort of hung out, threw a frisbee around a little bit, and I didn't know, am I supposed to bring Jesus up? What do I do? How do I talk to somebody about this? And so I just stayed quiet. I prayed the whole time. I was like, Lord, help me. I don't know what I'm doing. But I stayed quiet. And for 3 days, this went on. I would just hang out with him, and he would make all sorts of, crude jokes and talk about, buying drugs off of the truckers that were coming into town. And he had, a little, satchel thing that he kept his change in that he would save up to buy drugs off of the truckers. And he'd make crude jokes, and and people would laugh, and I honestly didn't get a lot of them. And so he'd be like, "Oh, do you not joke about that stuff?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not like against you joking about it, but I don't really have a background in it." And he'd be like, "Oh, okay." And the jokes would sort of like taper off a little bit, or he'd light up a cigarette, and then he'd be like, "Do you smoke?" And I'd be like, "Oh, not really." And he's like, "Is it all right if I do?" And I was like, "Well, I mean, I wouldn't, but you go on ahead." And so he stopped smoking so much around me. And by the third day, it was the day of the concert, we were doing a prayer walk around the grounds, and he showed up and flagged me over and was sitting at a park bench, and I sat with him, and he started, "Oh, there we go. All right, we're good, I can do this." I know, I've told this story a million times. I shouldn't have to cry every time. So he flagged me over, and I sat down. I was like, "What's up?" And he just asked me, "Are you a Christian?" And we had not talked about this at all prior to this. And I was like, "Yep, I am." And "How did you know?" And he said, "You just seemed clean." And at that point, I started telling him, "Well, now, I might not deal with the same exact stuff you do, but I still deal with stuff. Like, that doesn't necessarily make me cleaner than you, but there is a peace and a sanctity that comes from a relationship with Jesus." And he just, at that point, opened up. He was talking about how his family used to be Christians, and then his parents got divorced, and his older brother started sort of acting out. After that, started getting into drugs and wound up leaving home. And that's sort of the path that he was starting to take as well, because that's what he knew from his older brother. And he was just sharing that he was worried about his older brother now, and he wished that they could sing worship songs together again like they used to in church. Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, after that he told me that he thought that he might have OD'd that morning, because he was a little out of it. And when I started talking to him about it, I was like, "Hey, are you feeling all right?" And he was like, "Yeah." I felt paralyzed, like I couldn't move at all, and I was having trouble breathing. And he said that he just remembered screaming Jesus, and then he threw up, and then he was fine. And so then, yeah.
Wow.
So then he I didn't even have to ask him to pray. He was like, "Will you pray with me?" And we prayed that Jesus would enter back into his life, and took it from there. That was without having to say anything, and I'm pretty sure it was only because I was like, "God, I don't know how to say things, so you're going to have to do something."
Totally a Holy Spirit kind of story.
Yep. So
Yeah.
It works.
Applause for Jesus. That's awesome. Being on the road, I know, is not the most glamorous thing, but being able to share a testimony like that may have just planted some seeds somewhere right now. Very, very cool. Let's get to the technology part of where the recording industry is.
I cry about the technology, too.
No, it's just the fees. It's just the fees for it. Things have changed so much in the recording industry. You know, back in my day, it was tapes, and you go to a concert, you don't have to worry about iTunes and all that stuff. How important is it for you guys to make sure that you're hitting every possible stream? I think this will be for Sean and PJ, because they're the ones that are the social media junkies. So how? Well, just, I think that's pretty accurate. I mean, how important is that to get that out there into every possible aspect to get your songs and your message out there?
I'll go first. It's so completely important. And I don't know if you're just asking about, how important is it for a band or in general, but I can speak from a band perspective. It is so important because, to be honest, I've met guys who were in bands who were around before internet got big, and they talked about having to hoof their stuff to every concert. They'd go sit out in parking lots and hand out flyers and stuff like that and watch people throw it on the ground. It's so much easier to go on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or whatever. Those are my big ones.
No way.
And can't you tell? And paste some picture up there, because someone's going to be scrolling through their Facebook feed, and if they're a friend of yours, they're going to see the picture. or if it's a sponsored thing, because you can sponsor some of your posts online. You have to pay money so more people can see it, but, whatever. Facebook has to make money, too, as if they're at any kind of lack.
Soapbox, please.
Right. But it's so very important to have a presence online. And, for us, when we have people who are listening to our music overseas, they're not going to come to a concert over in the U.S., they're not going to pay thousands of dollars to come to our church today for this. They would much rather watch it on video online, or they'd like to see the post about it, or they'd like to just buy the album without hearing the music played. And were it not for social media, that's a big pond to cross, my friend. Were it not for social media, we wouldn't have been able to probably spread some of our influence over there. Obviously without God, we wouldn't have been able to make that work either, but definitely not without social media. That helped us sustain our presence over there, if nothing else.
I definitely agree. Social media has helped a lot in being able to help us grow as well, but I think that it even has helped us to expand our ministry into the business world. People tend to look at bands not as these super serious things, but just kind of as a thing you do when you're younger, and then when you're done, you actually stop that, and then you contribute to society. And so social media has helped us to reach into the business world and show that you can, this is a business, but more than a business, it's a ministry where we want to minister to other businesses, show them that, work can actually be fun and enjoyable, and particularly so if you incorporate the Lord into it, and your heart and your desires, your passions. So that's kind of what social media has done for, at least for us in my mind, is it's helped me to connect with other businesses and be like, hey guys, we're going to minister to you too, even if you don't show up at our concert.
Such a great outreach. So I'll be a good steward of time and watching your watch because I can't see anything back there. So seeing what time it is, I think we'll just go down the line one more time. Name off your favorite song and why.
Off this album?
Off this one. Off this one.
I'll start, I guess. My favorite song is Drought. Sorry, I'll try another one. Because Quattrin wrote it with PJ, or was it just you?
Were you not there?
No, I wasn't.
Were you in Switzerland at the time?
They said, we need a drummer. Sean, can you please come out of your room and help us? I was like, okay. Drought, because this past year was kind of a struggle for me in dealing with a lot of anger and feeling distant from God, kind of like I had gone out and become a lone wolf, and no one else was really going to support me, and so I felt like I was kind of in a drought away from the Lord. And the way that Quattrin, I think, originally wrote it was she wrote about tough situations that each of us have been through, and so each of a verse was like PJ, it was Drew, it was Sean, it was Sarah, it was Quattrin, Deborah, Daniel. And it kind of reminded me, number one, my siblings were paying attention to me. Number two, I apologize. I love them. They love me. It's great. Yeah,
I'm sorry, but when you're sitting there all day going, drumsticks, drumsticks, we have to put
hard.
you in your room.
But more so that just that the Lord was ministering to me through my siblings. And so drought hit me in that way.
Thank you. Now get back to the kids. Go.
Get in your cage.
Well, mine is not that deep. I really like the hymn that we wrote just because it was something different from the rock music. And even though I didn't get to use a synth or anything, when we play it outside of this church, I'll get to play the bass. So I'm kind of excited about that.
My favorite was probably Prayer. I didn't actually have anything to do with that song either.
Is that why it's your favorite?
I really, well, Could be. No, I liked it because when I first heard it was the day that we had a panel of trusted musicians and friends come in and listen to the first versions of all of the songs to tell us if they were any good and if we needed to make changes and stuff, which was really helpful. But that was the first time I actually heard the song Prayer, and I really liked it, and I got to be on the panel, and I was like, let's keep it. So it was good. I like that one.
I don't know if you know this, but my favorite song is Rest. And that's one that Drew wrote. And I remember listening to the beginning of it thinking like, yeah, this is cool. We've changed the lyrics a lot since the beginning. It was like, yeah, this is cool. This is kind of, I don't really understand what the words are saying, but it's pretty cool. And then there's one part where it's like, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. You'll hear it. I probably
hear it
won't
later.
know its
You'll
name,
get
but
it.
you'll hear it.
It's exactly like that, though.
And every time, it's like there are two songs where every time, no matter how many times I listen to them, I'll get goosebumps, and that's one of them. So.
I blow cold air across the back of her neck when she listens to that.
Even when you're not there, I still get goosebumps. There's somebody else blowing cold air at the back of my neck.
I think my favorite one is Prayer because it's just a very personal song to me. And my wife and I went through something that completely changed our perspective on what matters in life. And it was kind of my chance to get those feelings and thoughts out of my head into a place where I could hear them and go back to them. Because some challenges, you can get past them, but every now and again the emotions are going to come back. And so when I'm dealing with those emotions, I go back and I listen to the lyrics again and just remember how I was feeling when I was remembering the fact that God was healing me. And I mean, because Satan really tries hard to pull you down. And so sometimes you have to go back to the last time that you were feeling like you weren't being pulled, the last time you felt like God was holding you up. And so that's that song for me. So, yeah, Prayer is probably my favorite.
None of them said the highest. It's your first release on KNLW.
You only gave us one.
Sorry?
That's because
Back to the drawing board,
is your
PJ, for marketing
favorite.
class. Anyway, thank you guys so much for your time. I'm well aware that after the show is done, you gave me permission to put a couple more songs on KNLW. You know which ones they are. So later on tonight, we'll have more songs from the CD on KNLW 98.9 FM. So, I don't know, are you streaming this interview?
I don't know if we are streaming this interview.
Well, just in case, go to knlw.org, shameless plug. So, everyone here is ready to hear your music. Let's break down these chairs and let's rock and roll for Jesus.
Awesome.